The Savannah Community Center glowed under the soft May light, its wide windows framing a courtyard where live oaks draped with Spanish moss swayed gently. Inside, laughter mingled with the clink of glasses, and the scent of jasmine from table centerpieces floated through the air. My daughter, Emily, sat at the heart of it all, 7 months pregnant, her hands cradling a gift box tied with a pale blue ribbon. Then I turned, my steps measured, and walked out of the center. The Savannah sun bathed my face as I crossed the courtyard, its warmth a stark contrast to the cold truth Richard had laid bare. My name is Margaret Sullivan Maggie to those who share my heart. At 60, I'm a retired high school English teacher, a woman who spent decades nurturing students and raising Emily and Daniel with unwavering love. For years, I trusted Richard, a real estate developer whose charm masked a need for control, to manage our finances. He'd always said money was too complicated for me, a school teacher who loved books more than numbers. I believed him, handing over my paychecks, asking permission for small indulgences. But belief can erode, and mine had been crumbling since last Thanksgiving, when a text on his phone lit up the truth I'd been too afraid to face. As I reached my car, a sleek Audi I'd bought despite Richard's protests, I paused. The courtyard was quiet now, but I noticed a young girl from the shower sitting on a bench, her pencil dancing across a sketchbook. Her focus, the way she poured herself into her art, stirred something in me. I'd loved drawing as a girl, but life, marriage, motherhood, Richard's expectations had buried that passion. Watching her, I felt a pang of longing, a whisper of the Maggie I'd set aside. I slid into the driver's seat and pulled out my journal, a leather-bound book I'd started months ago when doubt became my constant companion. I wrote 3 things I was grateful for: Emily's resilience, my friend Lillian's unwavering support, and the strength I was only beginning to understand. It was a small act, but it tethered me to hope. My phone buzzed. Lillian, checking in. "You okay, hon?" I smiled, typing. "Stronger than I look." Then, with fingers steady but alive with purpose, I sent Richard a text. Just a secure link and a simple message. "Check this when you're alone." The link led to documents I'd spent months compiling with my financial advisor and lawyer. The Hilton Head Island beach house, a dream I'd cherished, now solely in my name. Our joint savings, carefully redistributed to accounts Richard couldn't touch. Retirement funds, secured in a trust my lawyer, Rebecca Larson, had assured me was unbreakable. Each move was a brick in the fortress I'd built in secret, a shield against the betrayal I'd seen coming. As I started the engine, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Richard stumbled out of the center, his face flushed, fingers fumbling with his phone. He was seeing it now, the evidence of my preparation, the unraveling of the control he'd wielded for decades. I turned onto a Savannah street, the live oaks arching overhead like guardians. I wasn't the woman who'd once apologized for wanting a new dress, who'd trusted Richard's "I've got it under control" without question. I was Maggie Sullivan, and I was rewriting my story. That walk from the community center wasn't just an exit. It was a crossing, a step into a life I'd been crafting in the shadows. I drove toward the loft I'd leased in secret, a modern space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Savannah River. The future was uncertain, but it glittered with possibility. I thought of Emily, her unborn child, and the girl sketching in the courtyard. They were reminders of what endured: love, creativity, the courage to begin again. She unwrapped a pair of tiny knit booties, her face alight with a joy that seemed to hold the room together. This was her baby shower, a celebration of the grandchild I'd dreamed of. And for a fleeting moment, the world felt whole. Richard's words were meant to shatter me, but they only broke the chains I'd worn too long. As the river came into view, I let out a breath, feeling the weight of 37 years lift. I wasn't broken. I was becoming. The Savannah skyline stretched before me, golden in the fading light, and I knew this was my moment not to fall, but to rise. I stood beside her, my heart swelling as friends and family buzzed around us. The tables, draped in linens the color of sea glass, sparkled with seashell decorations that caught the Georgia sun. I'd spent weeks planning this day with Emily, choosing every detail to reflect her love for the coast. It was a labor of love, a way to anchor her in happiness as her life expanded. But beneath my smile, a quiet unease simmered. For months, I'd sensed a shift in Richard, my husband of 37 years. His late nights, his sudden business trips to Atlanta, the way his gaze slid past mine, they were threads in a tapestry I wasn't ready to name. Then Richard stood, glass in hand, and the room hushed. I expected a toast, a proud father's words for Emily, whose laughter had always been his soft spot. Instead, his voice sliced through the warmth like a winter gust. "I'm leaving Maggie," he said, each word deliberate, his eyes fixed somewhere above my head. "I've met someone who truly sees my worth." The silence that followed was a living thing. Heavy, suffocating. Forks stilled. Emily's hands dropped the booties, her face crumpling. From the corner, a woman, Claire Monroe, I'd learned later raised her mimosa in an awkward, hesitant wave, her cheeks flushed with something like shame. Every eye turned to me. Shock, pity, curiosity, they pressed against my skin, a weight I could have crumbled under. My pulse raced, but something deeper, something forged in sleepless nights and secret plans, held me upright. I wasn't the woman Richard thought he'd blindsided. For months, I'd traced the cracks in our marriage, piecing together his lies. The dinners for two on our credit card statements, the fishing trips that stretched into weekends, the way he'd dismissed my questions with a patronizing smile. I'd been preparing, and this moment, cruel as it was one I'd anticipated in my quietest fears. "I'm happy for you, Richard," I said, my voice steady, cutting through the stunned hush. "I hope you find the path you're seeking." A ripple of murmurs spread, soft gasps from friends who'd known us for decades. Emily's eyes, brimming with tears, searched mine, and I saw the question she couldn't voice. "How are you so calm?" Asterisk. I rested my hand on her shoulder, squeezing gently. "I'll call you tonight, sweetheart," I whispered, my words a promise to her and to myself. The November air in Savannah carried the crisp promise of Thanksgiving, and our home on a quiet street lined with live oaks was alive with the sense of roasted turkey and cinnamon. I moved through the kitchen, arranging pecan pies on the counter, my hands steady but my mind restless. Emily and her husband Tom laughed in the dining room, while Daniel, home from Seattle, teased his sister about her growing baby bump. When I asked about his weekend plans, his answers were clipped, his patience thin. "Don't worry, Maggie," he'd say, dismissing me with a wave. "I've got it handled." But his control, once a comfort, now felt like a cage. I started waking before dawn, the house still, my thoughts loud. In the dim light of our study, I pored over old photo albums, tracing the years of our marriage. There we were, young and hopeful, buying our first home in Savannah. There was Emily's graduation, Richard's arm around me, proud but proprietary. The memories were real, but they clashed with the man I lived with now. Had he changed, or had I been blind? The question gnawed at me, but it also woke something dormant, a resolve I hadn't known I possessed. One morning, I drove to Forsyth Park, the fountain sparkling under the winter sun. I sat on a bench, journal in hand, and wrote what I couldn't say aloud. I deserve the truth. I deserve control. Asterisk. It was a vow. A line in the sand. That afternoon, I called Lillian Brooks, my closest friend, a retired nurse, whose wit cut through my doubts like a beacon. Over coffee at a riverside cafe, I told her everything. The text, the trips, the growing distance. "Maggie," she said, her eyes fierce. "You're not just a wife. You're a force. If Richard's hiding something, you need to protect yourself. Start with your money." Lillian's words were a lifeline. She recommended Sandra Tate, a financial advisor who'd helped her through her own divorce years ago. I made an appointment, my hands trembling as I dialed. Sandra's office, tucked in a historic Savannah building, was warm, lined with books and framed photos of her family. She listened as I poured out my fears, my voice breaking when I admitted how little I knew about our finances. 37 years, I said, and I've never had my own account. Richard always said it was easier this way. Sandra leaned forward, her gaze steady. "Maggie, it's never too late to learn. Let's build you a foundation he can't touch." That meeting was a turning point. Sandra explained the basics: bank accounts, investments, property titles with a patience that made me feel seen. She helped me open a personal account, a small act that felt monumental. I began to see Richard's control not just as betrayal, but as a theft of my agency. He wasn't just hiding an affair, he was hiding me from myself. The realization was painful, but it fueled me. I wasn't just fighting for my marriage. I was fighting for Maggie Sullivan, the woman I'd buried under years of trust. To steady myself, I joined a local book club, a suggestion from Lillian to get out of your head. The group met in a cozy Savannah bookstore, its shelves a refuge. We read novels of resilience, The Nightingale, Educated, and I found solace in stories of women who rebuilt their lives. One evening, inspired by a discussion about creativity, I bought a sketch pad and pencils. I'd loved drawing as a girl, but Richard had called it a hobby for kids. Friends filled the house with warmth, their voices weaving a tapestry of gratitude. Yet, as I glanced at Richard, my husband of 37 years, I felt a hollow ache. Something was wrong, and it had been for months. Now, alone in my loft's spare room, I sketched the Savannah River, its curves a mirror of my own unfolding strength. Each stroke was a reclaiming, a way to speak without words. As winter settled over Savannah, I felt a shift. The spark of suspicion had grown into a flame of purpose. I wasn't ready to confront Richard, not yet. But I was ready to learn, to prepare, to become the woman who could face whatever truth awaited. Driving home one evening, the city's lights reflecting on the river, I thought of Emily's baby, of Daniel's dreams, of the life I still wanted to live. Richard might have thought he held all the cards, but I was building my own deck. And when the time came, I'd play to win. This wasn't just about a text or a secret. It was about rediscovering the woman who'd taught students to question, to seek, to stand tall. The Savannah skyline glowed ahead, a promise of what I could become. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was awake. It started that evening, as I sliced apples for a crumble, the knife glinting under the kitchen lights. Richard's phone, left carelessly on the counter, lit up with a text. Missing you. Last night was everything. Asterisk. The sender was Claire Monroe. My breath caught, the knife pausing mid-cut. I set it down, wiped my hands on my apron, and stared at the screen. After 37 years of marriage, you develop an intuition, a quiet knowing that hums beneath the surface. This wasn't a colleague's message. This wasn't innocent. This was a crack in the foundation of everything I'd believed. I didn't confront him that night. The house was too full, the moment too fragile. Instead, I watched Richard as we gathered around the table, his charm as polished as ever. He raised a glass, toasting family and tradition, but his eyes didn't meet mine. I smiled, played the part of the devoted wife, but inside, questions churned. Who was Claire Monroe? Why was Richard different, distant, distracted, his routines unraveling? The man who'd once planned our weekends with precision now vanished for business trips to Atlanta, returning with vague excuses. His fishing outings, once monthly, stretched into every weekend, and our credit card statements showed dinners at restaurants too intimate for work. I'm Maggie Sullivan, 60, a retired high school English teacher who spent decades nurturing students and raising Emily and Daniel. For years, I trusted Richard, a real estate developer whose confidence bordered on arrogance, to handle our finances. He'd always said money was too complex for me, a woman who loved Shakespeare more than spreadsheets. I'd handed over my paychecks, believed his assurances that he had everything under control. But that text, those 3 words, missing you already, lit a spark. I couldn't unsee it, and I wouldn't ignore it. The days after Thanksgiving were a quiet rebellion. I began to pay attention, my teacher's instinct for detail sharpening. Richard's phone, once an afterthought, became a map of his secrets. I noticed calls he took in the garage, his voice low, his laughter unfamiliar. Our bank statements, which I'd rarely checked, revealed charges that didn't add up: $200 at a Savannah bistro, $150 at a boutique hotel in Atlanta, always for 2. The winter light filtered through the tall windows of Sandra Tate's office in downtown Savannah, casting soft shadows on the hardwood floor. I sat across from her, a stack of financial statements spread between us, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. It was December, a month since the Thanksgiving text from Claire Monroe had shattered my trust in Richard, my husband of 37 years. That single message, missing you. This is yours now, Rebecca said, handing me the deed. I held it, feeling its weight, not just as property but as power. Richard didn't know, and that secrecy was my strength. As I built my fortress, I uncovered truths that stunned me. Sandra helped me catalog our assets, and I discovered Richard's hidden wealth condos in Miami, stock portfolios, a second retirement account I'd never seen. "He kept this from you?" Sandra asked, her brow furrowed. I nodded, shame mixing with anger. I'd been the woman who asked permission to buy a coat, who believed finances were too complex for her. But shame, I realized, was a choice. I chose to learn instead. Sandra taught me about beneficiary designations, tax returns, property deeds. Each lesson was a brick, each document a layer of protection. Outside my secret plans, I sought solace in new passions. The book club I'd joined became a lifeline, its members teachers, artists, retirees sharing stories of resilience over coffee and novels. One night, we discussed The Alchemist, and a line about following your dreams stuck with me. Inspired, I began painting again, setting up an easel in my study. My first piece was a watercolor of Savannah's riverfront, its hues capturing the hope I was rediscovering. Painting wasn't just art, it was defiance, a reclaiming of the Maggie who'd once sketched under oak trees. I also started mentoring Sarah, a young woman from the book club who dreamed of starting her own business. Over lunch at a Savannah cafe, I shared what I was learning about financial independence. "Never let anyone control your money," I told her, my voice firm. Her eyes lit up, and I saw myself in Hiriger, capable but unaware of her own strength. Mentoring her was like building another kind of fortress, one that extended beyond me, protecting others from the ignorance I'd endured. Yet, the weight of secrecy was heavy. At home, I cooked Richard's favorite shrimp and grits, listened to his stories about work, nodded when he complained about stress. He was oblivious, his arrogance a blind spot. "You seem distracted," he said one evening, not looking up from his phone. "Everything okay?" The irony almost made me laugh. "Just thinking about the future," I replied, my voice even. He nodded, dismissing me as always. But my future was no longer his to shape. Driving through Savannah one evening, the city's lights reflecting on the river, I felt a shift. My fortress wasn't just financial. It was emotional, creative, communal. I thought of Emily, her baby due in spring, and Daniel chasing his dreams in Seattle. I thought of the Hilton Head house, its porch waiting for me. Richard might have thought he held the keys to our life, but I was crafting my own. Each Stipevery account opened, every document signed, every brushstroke on canvas was a declaration. I was enough. This wasn't just about protecting assets. It was about reclaiming the woman who'd taught students to question, to dream, to stand tall. The Savannah skyline glowed ahead, its beauty a mirror of my growing strength. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was building, and when the time came, my fortress would stand unshaken. Last night was everything, had ignited a spark of suspicion, and now, with Sandra's guidance, I was fanning it into a flame of action. I wasn't just Maggie Sullivan, the retired English teacher who'd spent decades deferring to her husband's control. I was a woman building a fortress, brick by careful brick, to protect the life I deserved. Sandra's office, nestled in a historic building near the Savannah River, felt like a sanctuary. Books lined the walls, their spines worn from use, and a photo of her daughter smiled from the desk. She pushed her glasses up her nose, her voice calm but firm. "Maggie, you've been married 37 years and you've never had a separate account. That changes today." Her words landed like a key turning in a lock. For years, Richard, a real estate developer whose confidence had once felt like strength, had managed our finances. He'd called my paychecks cute contributions, insisting it was easier if he handled everything. I'd believed him, handing over my earnings, trusting his mantra. Asterisk. I've got it under control. Asterisk. But control, I was learning, could be a cage. Sandra guided me through the first steps. We opened a personal bank account in my name, a small act that felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. She showed me how to transfer funds from our joint accounts. Not all at once that could raise red flags, but gradually, strategically. "Think of it as planting seeds," she said, her smile encouraging. "You're growing your future." I nodded, my heart racing with a mix of fear and exhilaration. Each transfer was a brick in my fortress, a shield against the betrayal I now knew was real. Richard's late-night calls, his business trips to Atlanta. The dinners for two, on our credit card statements, they weren't just signs of an affair. They were proof he'd underestimated me. The next week, I met Rebecca Larson, a lawyer Lillian had recommended. Her office overlooked Forsyth Park, where the fountain sparkled like a promise. Rebecca, sharp and direct, explained Georgia's equitable distribution laws. "You've contributed to this marriage for nearly 4 decades," she said, her pen tapping the desk. "As a teacher, you supported your family, raised Emily and Daniel, kept the home running. You're entitled to a fair share." Fair. The word echoed in my mind. For years, Richard had made me feel my contributions were secondary, my dreams like the Hilton Head Island beach house frivolous. Now, Rebecca was handing me a map to justice. The Hilton Head house was my first bold move. Richard had called it a retiree's fantasy, but I'd always seen it as our haven, its porch overlooking the Atlantic, a place to grow old together. Rebecca discovered it was titled in a way that allowed me to transfer it solely to my name, a legal maneuver Richard hadn't anticipated. I signed the papers in her office, my hands steady, the ocean breeze from an open window carrying the scent of salt. The January air in Savannah carried a gentle chill, the kind that made the city's live oaks seem to whisper secrets as their Spanish moss swayed. In our home, a 2-story colonial on a quiet street, I moved through the motions of a life that felt increasingly like a stage play. The kitchen smelled of shrimp and grits, Richard's favorite, simmering on the stove. He didn't suspect I'd uncovered his Miami condos, his hidden stock portfolios, or the second mortgage he'd taken without my knowledge. He didn't know I was rewriting our future, one careful step at a time. To balance the strain, I leaned into new passions. My book club, a haven of laughter and stories, met weekly at a Savannah bookstore. We discussed The Nightingale, its tale of courage mirroring my own quiet rebellion. One member, Sarah, the young woman I'd begun mentoring, shared her dream of opening a bakery. "I'm scared to take the leap," she admitted over coffee. I squeezed her hand. "Fear means you're growing," I said. "Start small, but start." Teaching her to budget, to trust her instincts, felt like passing a torch. I was no longer just protecting myself. I was lighting the way for others. My painting, too, became a refuge. In the quiet of my study, I set up an easel, my watercolors capturing Savannah's riverfront, the way the light danced on the water, the curve of the horizon. Each brushstroke was a defiance of Richard's voice, the one that had called my art childish. I painted late into the night, the house silent, my heart full. One evening, inspired by a book club discussion, I started a podcast with Lillian, my friend and confidant. We called it Silver Linings, sharing stories of resilience minds still unspoken, but simmering beneath my words. Recording in her cozy living room, I found my voice, not just as Maggie the wife, but as Maggie the storyteller. Yet, the facade wasn't flawless. Some nights, as I lay awake, the weight of my secrecy pressed against me. I thought of Emily, her laughter at our planning sessions, and Daniel, far away in Seattle, unaware of the storm looming. What would they think when the truth came out? Would they understand why I'd acted in secret? I wrote letters to them in my journal, words I couldn't yet say aloud. Asterisk. I'm doing this for us. For the family we'll rebuild. Asterisk. The act of writing grounded me, a reminder that love, not revenge, was my compass. One afternoon, as I drove to meet Sandra, Savannah's streets glowed under a winter sun. I passed the community center, its windows reflecting the promise of Emily's celebration. Richard thought he held the reins, but I was steering now. My fortress was nearly complete, accounts secured, assets protected, my spirit rekindled through art and community. I wasn't just surviving his betrayal, I was thriving in spite of it. This wasn't just about keeping up appearances. It was about reclaiming the woman who'd taught students to dream, who'd raised children with love, who'd once believed in forever. The Savannah River sparkled beside me, its current a mirror of my resolve. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was waiting, and when the moment came, I'd step out from behind the curtain, ready to claim the life I'd built. The dining room table was set with the china we'd bought for our 10th anniversary, its delicate blue pattern a reminder of simpler days. But as I arranged the plates, my hands steady, my heart was elsewhere, building a fortress of financial security and personal strength that Richard, my husband of 37 years, knew nothing about. Since Thanksgiving, when a text from Claire Monroe had revealed Richard's betrayal, I'd been living a double life. By day, I was Maggie Sullivan, the retired English teacher, devoted wife, and soon-to-be grandmother, planning Emily's baby shower with a smile. By night, I was a strategist, working with my financial advisor, Sandra Tate, and lawyer, Rebecca Larson, to secure my future. I'd opened personal accounts, transferred funds, and claimed the Hilton Head Island beach house as my own. Each move was a brick in a fortress Richard couldn't breach, a shield against the affair I now knew was real. Yet, to protect my plan and my children, I maintained a facade of normalcy, a performance so convincing it sometimes fooled even me. Richard sat at the table, his phone buzzing as he scrolled, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath my calm exterior. "This looks great, Maggie," he said, his voice casual, as if his late-night calls and Atlanta meetings hadn't fractured our trust. I nodded, serving him a plate, my smile practiced. "Glad you think so," I replied, my tone light. Inside, I was cataloging his lies, the fishing trips that stretched into weekends, the restaurant charges for two, the way he'd dismissed my questions with a patronizing, "I've got it under control." His arrogance was my advantage, a blind spot that let me build my defenses undetected. Planning Emily's baby shower became my anchor. Emily, 7 months pregnant and radiant, wanted a coastal theme, a nod to her love for the sea. We spent evenings in her Savannah apartment, flipping through magazines, choosing seashell centerpieces and pale blue linens. "You're so good at this, Mom," she said, her eyes bright. I hugged her, hiding the weight of my secret. This day was for her, for the grandchild who'd soon call me Nana. I wouldn't let Richard's betrayal taint it. So I threw myself into the details, booking the community center, designing invitations, planning games, each task a way to keep my heart steady. At home, I played the role of the dutiful wife with precision. I listened to Richard's stories about his real estate deals, nodding as he complained about market stress. When he announced another weekend retreat in Atlanta, I feigned disappointment, my voice soft. "I'll miss you," I said, knowing full well he'd be with Claire. The lie stung, but it kept him complacent. The Savannah Community Center buzzed with the warmth of celebration, its high ceilings adorned with strings of fairy lights that cast a soft glow over the room. Tables draped in sea glass blue linens held seashell centerpieces, each catching the May sunlight streaming through wide windows. My daughter, Emily, 7 months pregnant, sat at the heart of it all, her laughter ringing as she unwrapped a tiny pair of sandals, a gift for the grandchild I'd soon hold. I felt every eye on my back, but my head was high, my heart steady. This wasn't defeat, it was defiance. In the courtyard I paused, noticing a young girl from the shower sketching on a bench, her pencil dancing with purpose. Her focus stirred something in me, a reminder of the watercolors I'd begun painting, the creativity I'd reclaimed. I slid into my Audi, a car Richard had called extravagant, and pulled out my journal. I wrote 3 things I was grateful for: Emily's strength, Lillian's loyalty, and my own courage. The act, small but deliberate, anchored me. Then, with fingers fueled by a quiet fire, I sent Richard a text. Just a secure link and 5 words. "Check this when you're alone." The link led to documents detailing my financial moves, the Hilton Head house, now mine. Our savings, redistributed, retirement accounts, locked in a trust Rebecca swore was airtight. As I started the engine, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Richard burst out of the center, face flushed, fumbling with his phone. He was seeing it now, the proof of my preparation, the unraveling of the control he'd wielded for 37 years. I turned onto a Savannah street, the live oaks arching overhead like sentinels. I wasn't the woman who'd once asked permission to buy a scarf, who'd trusted Richard's "I've got it under control." I was Maggie Sullivan, and I was claiming my story. The day before, I'd spoken at a local women's event, sharing my journey of resilience through our podcast, Silver Linings. Standing before a small crowd, my voice steady, I'd talked about finding strength in adversity. The applause had felt like a promise, a sign I was ready for this moment. Now, Driving toward the loft I'd secretly leased, a sleek space with views of the Savannah River, I felt that promise fulfilled. The loft was my sanctuary, its floor-to-ceiling windows a canvas for the life I was painting. I'd even started a garden on its balcony, planting lavender and rosemary, their scents a daily reminder of growth. This wasn't just an exit from a room. It was a crossing into a life I'd built in the shadows. Richard's words were meant to shatter me, but they only cracked open the door to who I was becoming. I thought of Emily, her unborn child, and the girl sketching in the courtyard. They were my why, love, creativity, the courage to begin again. As the river glinted in the distance, I let out a breath, the weight of years lifting. I wasn't broken. I was unveiled. The Savannah skyline stretched before me, golden in the fading light, and I knew this was my moment not to fall, but to rise. Richard thought he'd written the ending, but I held the pen. My fortress was strong, my heart stronger, and as I drove, the city's beauty mirrored the future I was crafting gone, where I was enough. I stood beside her, my heart swelling with pride. The months of planning this baby shower coastal themed, just as Emily wanted, culminating in this moment of joy. But beneath my smile, a quiet tension simmered, the weight of secrets I'd carried since Thanksgiving, when a text from Claire Monroe had exposed Richard's betrayal. For months, I'd built a fortress in silence. With my financial advisor, Sandra Tate, and lawyer, Rebecca Larson, I'd opened personal accounts, transferred funds, and secured the Hilton Head Island beach house in my name. I'd uncovered Richard's hidden condos in Miami, his secret stock portfolios, his lies about our finances. I'd maintained a facade of normalcy, cooking his favorite meals, nodding through his excuses for Atlanta meetings, all while painting watercolors, mentoring a young woman named Sarah, and co-hosting a podcast with my friend Lillian. But nothing could have prepared me for the moment Richard chose to tear down the curtain. He stood, glass in hand, and the room fell silent, expecting a proud father's toast. Instead, his voice cut through the festive hum like a blade. "I'm leaving, Maggie," he said, his tone cold, eyes avoiding mine. "I've met someone who truly sees my worth." The words hung in the air, heavy as a storm cloud. Emily's hands froze on the sandals, her face crumpling. Guests stared, their expressions a kaleidoscope of shock, pity, and discomfort. From the corner, Claire Monroe, a woman in her 30s with a strained smile, raised her mimosa in an awkward wave, her presence a puzzle I hadn't yet solved. The silence was deafening, a void that threatened to swallow me whole. But I didn't break. Months of preparation, of reclaiming my voice through art and community, had forged a strength I hadn't known I possessed. I was Maggie Sullivan, 60, a retired English teacher who'd once deferred to Richard's control, believing his claims that finances were too complex for me. Now, I was a woman who'd learned, planned, and acted. His announcement, cruel as it was a spark I'd anticipated in my quietest fears. I met Emily's tear-filled eyes, my hand resting on her shoulder, grounding us both. "I'm happy for you, Richard," I said. My voice clear, slicing through the stunned hush. "I hope you find what you're seeking." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Soft gasps from friends who'd known us for decades. Emily's gaze held a question. "How are you so calm?" But I saw pride flicker in her eyes, too. I leaned down, whispering, "I'll call you tonight, sweetheart. My word's a lifeline for us both." Then I turned, my steps deliberate, and walked out of the center. The Savannah sun warmed my face as I crossed the courtyard, its light a stark contrast to the cold truth Richard had laid bare. The Savannah sky was a soft gray the morning after Emily's baby shower, its clouds heavy with the promise of rain. I sat in my loft, the floor-to-ceiling windows framing the Savannah River, its surface rippling like my thoughts. The previous day, Richard, my husband of 37 years, had stood in a room full of family and friends and announced he was leaving me for someone who truly sees my worth. I wasn't just fighting for me. I was fighting for them, for the family we'd rebuild on firmer ground. Lillian, my rock, arrived that evening with takeout from a Savannah diner, crab cakes and sweet tea, her cure for any crisis. She raised her glass, her eyes twinkling. "To your rebirth, Maggie," she toasted. "You're a phoenix rising from the ashes of that man's nonsense." I laughed, the sound surprising me, and we ate straight from the containers, the loft's balcony garden filling the air with lavender. Lillian's support was a lifeline, but her words cut deeper than she knew. "I've watched Richard diminish you for years," she said, her voice soft. "Every decision, every dollar, he controlled. You're not just surviving, Maggie. You're shining." Her honesty cracked something open in me, a mix of gratitude and grief for the woman I'd been. To channel the turmoil, I poured myself into new endeavors. I'd started a community art project, painting murals with local youth on a community center wall. That morning, I'd sketched a design a lighthouse, its beam cutting through a storm, a symbol of my own journey. Working with the kids, their laughter echoing, reminded me of my teaching days, of the joy in guiding others to their light. I also wrote letters to Emily and Daniel, sealed in envelopes for when the time was right. "I've built this fortress for us." I wrote, "to protect the love that endures." The words were a promise, a bridge to the future. As night fell, I stood on my balcony, the Savannah skyline glittering like a dream. I'd faced my children's pain, their questions, and emerged not weaker, but fiercer. Richard's announcement had been meant to break me, but it only sharpened my purpose. I thought of Emily's baby, of Daniel's dreams, of the mural taking shape. My fortress wasn't just financial. It was a testament to love, resilience, and the woman I was becoming. The river flowed below, its current a mirror of my strength. I wasn't faltering. I was forging ahead, ready for whatever came next. His words, sharp and public, had stunned the guests at the community center, but I'd walked out with my head high, my response calm, my secret fortress intact. I'd spent months building it, transferring funds, securing the Hilton Head Island beach house, uncovering Richard's hidden condos in Miami while maintaining a facade of normalcy. But now, in the quiet of my new home, the fallout began, and it came first from the people I loved most. Emily's call came at dawn, her voice thick with tears. "Mom, what's happening?" she asked, the hurt in her words cutting deeper than Richard's betrayal. "Dad came back to the shower after you left, but he wouldn't explain. Everyone was whispering, staring. It was humiliating. My heart ached for her, my daughter, 7 months pregnant, who deserved a day of joy, not scandal. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," I said, my voice steady despite the guilt gnawing at me. "This wasn't how I wanted it to go. Are you okay? Is the baby okay?" She sighed, her breath shaky. "We're fine, but Mom, Dad says you've taken everything accounts. The beach house. Is that true?" I closed my eyes, the weight of her question pressing against me. Not guilt for what I'd done, but for how it shadowed her light. "Emily," I said, choosing my words carefully, "your father and I have things to work through. I've protected what's rightfully mine after 37 years of marriage. That's all you need to know right now." She hesitated, then whispered, "Why didn't you tell me something was wrong?" I swallowed hard, picturing her at the shower, unwrapping tiny sandals, her smile so bright. "Because it was your day," I said. "I never imagined your father would choose that moment to break us." Promising to visit soon, I hung up, my resolve firm but my heart tender. Emily was my why, the reason I'd built my fortress, but I hadn't anticipated how its walls might cast shadows on her. Daniel's call came next, his voice sharp from Seattle. "Mom, what the hell is going on?" he demanded, the edge of his words softened by worry. "Dad showed up at my hotel last night, ranting about how you've stolen his retirement. He says you transferred the Hilton Head house to yourself." "That's cold." I flinched, not at his accusation, but at the pain in his tone. Daniel, my son, the dreamer who'd built a life in graphic design, was caught in a storm he didn't understand. "Watch your language," I said automatically, the teacher in me surfacing. Then, softer, "Your father's upset because he's facing consequences he didn't expect." A long pause followed. "What consequences?" he asked. I took a breath, choosing truth over evasion. "What's cold, Daniel, is announcing you're leaving your wife for another woman at your pregnant daughter's baby shower." Silence stretched between us, heavy with realization. He didn't tell me that part, Daniel admitted, his voice quieter. I nodded, though he couldn't see. Richard had always been selective with truth, a trait I'd once accepted but now mirrored strategically. We'll talk more when you're here, I said. I love you. Hanging up, I felt a flicker of anger not at Daniel, but at Richard, for forcing our children to navigate his wreckage. Yet, their pain strengthened my resolve. The Savannah River flowed steadily outside my loft, its surface catching the late May light as I stood on the balcony, lavender and rosemary from my garden scenting the air. It had been a week since Richard, my husband of 37 years, announced at our daughter Emily's baby shower that he was leaving me for someone who truly sees my worth. I sat stunned, my anger at Richard deepening into something colder, more complex. Why are you telling me this now? I asked, still skeptical but shaken. Claire reached into her bag and pulled out a flash drive. Because I went to the firm's ethics board yesterday with proof, she said. They've launched an investigation. Richard called me last night, threatening me again, saying you'd stolen his money. I realized you might be in danger too. She handed me the drive. This has everything: altered statements, forged authorizations. I thought you'd need it for your divorce. After Claire left, I sat in silence, the flash drive heavy in my palm. The woman I'd vilified was a victim, not a villain, her story echoing my own betrayal. I called Sandra, arranging to meet immediately. In her office, surrounded by books and the hum of Savannah's streets, we reviewed the documents. Sandra's face grew grim. This is serious, Maggie, she said. These aren't just ethical violations, they're potentially criminal. The truth settled like a stone. Richard hadn't just betrayed me with lies about an affair. He'd committed fraud, endangering lives beyond our own. Claire's courage in coming forward mirrored my own quiet rebellion, and I felt a surprising kinship with her. To process the shock, I turned to my anchors. That evening, I painted a new watercolor stormy sea with a single boat, its sail catching the light, a tribute to Claire's bravery and my own. I also joined a yoga class at a Savannah studio, the stretches loosening the tension in my body, the breathing grounding my heart. Inspired by Claire's act, I proposed a financial literacy workshop with her for women in our community, turning our pain into purpose. We met at a local library, planning sessions on budgeting and investing, our shared resolve a bridge between strangers. As I stood on my balcony that night, the Savannah skyline glowing, I felt a shift. Claire's truth had reframed my fight not against her, but for justice, for myself, for others Richard had harmed. I thought of Emily's unborn child, Daniel's dreams, the lighthouse mural I was painting with local youth. My fortress was stronger for this alliance, my heart fiercer for this empathy. The river flowed below, its rhythm a reminder that truth, however painful, sets you free. I wasn't alone. I was rising, and so was Claire. His words, delivered in the festive glow of the Savannah Community Center, had stunned our family and friends, but I'd walked out with composure, my secret fortress built with the help of my financial advisor, Sandra Tate, and lawyer, Rebecca Larson Holding Firm. I'd secured the Hilton Head Island beach house, redistributed our savings, and uncovered Richard's hidden Miami condos, all while painting watercolors, mentoring a young woman named Sarah, and co-hosting a podcast with my friend Lillian. Yet, nothing could have prepared me for the woman who knocked on my door that morning, shifting the ground beneath me. Claire Monroe stood in the hallway, her tailored pantsuit and minimal makeup a far cry from the homewrecker I'd imagined. At 34, she was younger than me, but her eyes carried a weight that spoke of battles fought. I'd seen her at the shower, awkwardly raising her mimosa when Richard made his announcement, and assumed she was his lover. Now, as she clutched her handbag like a shield, I felt a mix of curiosity and caution. "Mrs. Sullivan," she began, her voice tight. "Thank you for seeing me." I hesitated, then gestured to the couch. "I assume you have something worth hearing," I said, my tone even but guarded. She sat on the edge, her posture rigid, and what she said next unraveled everything I thought I knew. "I'm not having an affair with your husband," Claire stated, her words flat but heavy. "I never was." I laughed, a sharp sound born of disbelief. "You'll forgive me if I don't buy that. I said, crossing my arms. You were at my daughter's baby shower, waving like you belonged, right after Richard said he was leaving me for someone else. Claire's eyes filled with tears, but she held my gaze. He told me it was a business brunch, she said. I had no idea it was a family event until I got there. By then, it was too awkward to leave. Something in her voice, a raw honesty, made me pause. I leaned forward, searching her face. Then why the announcement? Why the wave? Claire took a deep breath, her hands trembling. Because Richard has been manipulating both of us, she said. I'm not his girlfriend. I'm his victim. For the next hour, she told a story that shook me to my core. Claire, a widow who'd inherited a substantial sum after her husband's death, had been Richard's client at his real estate firm. He'd managed her portfolio, but over time, he began making unauthorized investments, skimming fees, and diverting funds to cover his own debts. When she discovered the discrepancies, she threatened to report him. That's when the threats began. He said no one would believe me, Claire explained, her voice breaking. He claimed he could make it look like I'd approved everything, that he had connections to ruin me. The Savannah morning was heavy with the scent of rain, the kind that promised to wash the city clean. I stood in my loft, the Savannah River glinting through floor-to-ceiling windows, my balcony garden's lavender swaying in the breeze. 2 weeks had passed since Richard, my husband of 37 years, announced at our daughter Emily's baby shower that he was leaving me for someone who truly sees my worth. Richard stepped closer, his voice low, insistent. You don't get it, Maggie. Claire's not what you think. This whole situation isn't what you think. I raised an eyebrow, my calm unnerving him. Then explain, I challenged. Explain why you humiliated Emily at her baby shower. Explain the second mortgage I never signed. Explain why you've been lying for years. His expression hardened, a flash of the man who'd controlled our finances, our life. You'll regret this, he said. I built everything we have. You wouldn't know how to manage it without me. I smiled, genuine and sharp. That's where you're wrong, I said. I've learned more than you ever imagined. Walking away, I felt a surge of power. Richard's threats were empty. My fortress was solid. That evening, I hosted a charity gala for the financial literacy workshop Claire and I were building, the Savannah venue alive with music and supporters. Standing before the crowd, I shared a story not mine, but one of resilience, of women reclaiming their futures. The applause was a reminder of my strength, a strength Richard couldn't touch. Later, I journaled lessons for my future grandchild. Trust yourself. Knowledge is power. Asterisk. The act, quiet but deliberate, was a vow to pass on what I'd learned. Rebecca and I crafted a strategy, leveraging Claire's evidence. We demanded full ownership of the Hilton Head and Savannah properties, 70% of our investment accounts, a lump sum alimony payment, and immunity from Richard's professional liabilities. He'll fight this, Rebecca warned. I shook my head, certain. He won't, I said, not when he knows what I hold. Claire's flash drive was a sword, one I'd wield strategically, not vengefully. I thought of Emily's unborn child, Daniel's dreams, the lighthouse mural I was painting with local youth. This wasn't just about me. It was about protecting them, about building a legacy of strength. As I stood on my balcony that night, the Savannah skyline shimmering, I felt the weight of my choices. Richard's betrayal had been a storm, but I'd built a fortress to weather it. The river flowed below, its rhythm a mirror of my resolve. I wasn't just surviving, I was commanding the battlefield, my heart fierce, my future clear. The showdown wasn't the end, it was the beginning of a life I'd claimed as my own. His words, delivered in the festive glow of the community center, had shocked our family and friends, but I'd walked out with composure, my secret fortress built with Sandra Tate, my financial advisor, and Rebecca Larson, my lawyer unshaken. I'd secured the Hilton Head Island beach house, redistributed our savings, and uncovered Richard's hidden Miami condos. Claire Monroe, the woman I'd thought was his lover, had revealed herself as his victim, her flash drive of evidence exposing his fraud. Now, as I prepared for a confrontation, I felt not fear, but a fierce clarity. Rebecca's office, overlooking Forsyth Park, was a haven of order, its walls lined with legal texts and framed degrees. She greeted me with a grave nod, spreading documents across her desk. Richard's attorney contacted us, she said, her voice steady. They're contesting the Hilton Head transfer, claiming you acted in bad faith. They're also requesting an emergency hearing, alleging Richard's facing financial hardship. I nearly laughed, the irony sharp. Financial hardship? Richard, who earned over $300,000 a year, who'd hidden condos and portfolios from me. But Rebecca's next words sobered me. There's more, she said, sliding papers toward me. Credit card statements showed tens of thousands in debt. A personal loan carried a crippling interest rate. A second mortgage on our Savannah home unsigned by me loomed like a betrayal deeper than any affair. How is this possible? I whispered, my hands trembling as I traced the numbers. For 37 years, I'd trusted Richard's mantra. Asterisk, I've got it under control. Asterisk, I'd been the English teacher, the mother to Emily and Daniel, the woman who asked permission for small indulgences, believing finances were too complex for me. Now, Claire's evidence and these documents painted a picture of a man drowning in secrets. There's an ethics investigation at his firm, Rebecca added gently. Claire's allegations unauthorized investments, diverted fundshave triggered it. If they find he mismanaged client accounts, he could lose his license. The pieces clicked. Richard's erratic behavior, his insistence on delaying retirement, his arguments about money. He hadn't just betrayed me. He'd gambled our future. I left Rebecca's office, my mind racing, and noticed a familiar black Mercedes across the street. Richard stepped out, his face haggard, eyes bloodshot, still wearing the suit from the shower. Maggie, he called, his voice carrying across the parking lot. We need to talk. I hesitated, the Savannah breeze cool against my skin, then turned to face him. He looked like a stranger. The charm that had once drawn me now eroded by desperation. About what, Richard? I asked, my voice steady. Your threats to Claire? Your secret debts? The ethics probe at your firm? His face paled, shock flickering in his eyes. How do you? He started, but I cut him off. I know everything, I said, the words a quiet thunder. All the things you kept from me, thinking I was too simple to understand. The Savannah air was thick with the promise of summer, the Savannah River reflecting a golden dusk as I stood in Rebecca Larson's law office, overlooking the city's historic streets. 3 weeks had passed since Richard, my husband of 37 years, announced at our daughter Emily's baby shower that he was leaving me for someone who truly sees my worth. When they returned, Richard's attorney spoke stiffly. We'll accept the terms with one modification. My client requests visitation rights with his future grandchild. The request caught me off guard. A pang of unexpected emotion rising. Despite everything, his lies, his fraud, his public betrayal, Richard was still a father, soon a grandfather. I looked at him, seeing not the man who'd hurt me, but the one who'd once carried Emily on his shoulders. Agreed, I said, my voice soft but firm, provided he completes a financial ethics course. Richard's eyes widened, surprise flickering. Why stipulate that? He asked. I held his gaze. Because our grandchild deserves a grandfather who knows right from wrong, I said. Something you've forgotten. 2 hours later, the papers were signed, notarized, and my 37-year marriage was effectively over. I walked out into Savannah's streets, the weight of victory mingling with a quiet grief. Justice had been served, but it cost me the illusion of the life I'd built. That evening, I attended a writing retreat in Charleston, a gift to myself to process the day. Surrounded by low-country oaks, I wrote in my journal, Justice isn't revenge, it's truth, set free. Asterisk. The words were a balm, a reminder that my fight was for clarity, not destruction. Richard's professional world unraveled soon after. His firm placed him on leave, the ethics investigation expanding to include regulators. Claire's evidence, combined with other clients' complaints, painted a damning picture. He avoided criminal charges through a cooperation agreement, but his career was finished. I learned this from Sandra, who met me at a Savannah cafe to review my new financial reality. You've secured significant assets, she said, but Richard's debts mean there's less to divide than we thought. I nodded, undaunted. The Hilton Head house, the accounts, my loft, they were enough. More than enough was the woman I'd become. To anchor myself, I poured energy into my community. I'd created a scholarship fund for single mothers, launching it at the charity gala Claire and I had hosted. At a recent event, a young recipient thanked me, her eyes bright with hope. "You've changed my life," she said. I smiled, thinking of Sarah, the book club member I mentored, now opening her bakery. These acts painting a lighthouse mural with local youth, teaching financial literacy with Claire, writing for my grandchild were my true wealth, a legacy beyond money. As I stood on my balcony that night, the Savannah skyline aglow, I felt the price of justice settle into my bones. It wasn't just the assets I'd won, or the marriage I'd lost. It was the cost of seeing Richard clearly, of carrying my children's pain, of choosing truth over comfort. I thought of Emily's baby, due soon, and the retreat's quiet lessons. The river flowed below, its current a mirror of my journey, turbulent, but steady. I wasn't just surviving. I was shaping a future where love, not loss, defined me. His words had shattered the festive warmth of the community center. But I'd walked out with resolve, my secret fortress built with my financial advisor, Sandra Tate, and Rebecca standing firm. I'd secured the Hilton Head Island beach house, redistributed our savings, and uncovered Richard's hidden Miami condos. Claire Monroe, revealed not as his lover, but his victim, had given me evidence of his fraud, and in a tense confrontation, I demanded a settlement that protected my future. Now, as we prepared for the final negotiation, I faced the bittersweet cost of justice. Rebecca's office, with its view of Forsyth Park's sparkling fountain, was a place of clarity. She slid a folder across her desk, her expression measured. "Richard's attorney has reviewed our terms," she said. "Full ownership of the Savannah and Hilton Head properties. 70% of the investment accounts, a lump sum alimony payment, and no liability for his professional misconduct." "They're rattled, Maggie. Claire's evidence has them cornered." I nodded, my heart a mix of triumph and sorrow. The flash drive Claire had given me proof of Richard's unauthorized investments and threats was a weapon I'd wielded strategically, not vengefully. But justice, I was learning, came with a price, one that touched not just Richard, but our family. The settlement meeting was held in a sleek conference room, its glass walls framing Savannah's skyline. Richard arrived with his attorney, a sharp-suited man with a predatory gaze. Richard looked diminished, his face etched with lines, his hair grayer than I remembered. The man who'd once controlled our finances, who'd dismissed my dreams as frivolous, was a shadow of himself. Rebecca opened the folder, her voice crisp. "Mrs. Sullivan's terms are clear," she said, sliding documents across the table. Richard's attorney skimmed them, his jaw tightening. "This is outrageous," he snapped. 70%? Both properties? You're gutting my client." I met Richard's eyes, my voice calm but unyielding. "Is it?" I asked. "Considering what I know about your professional conduct, Richard, I'd say it's generous." His face drained of color, fear flickering in his gaze. "What are you talking about?" he stammered. Rebecca produced the flash drive, its presence a quiet threat. "This contains evidence of your financial misconduct," she said. "We haven't shared it with authorities yet." Richard's attorney leaned in, whispering urgently, but I saw the surrender in Richard's posture. They stepped outside, their silhouettes tense through the glass. I thought of Emily, 7 months pregnant, and Daniel, grappling with our family's fracture. This wasn't just about assets, it was about protecting them, about ensuring their future wasn't tainted by Richard's recklessness. The Savannah sunrise painted the river in hues of gold and pink, its light filtering through my loft's windows as I stood on the balcony, the scent of lavender from my garden mingling with the morning air. It was June, a year since Richard, my husband of 37 years, announced at our daughter Emily's baby shower that he was leaving me for someone who truly sees my worth. My podcast with Lillian, Silver Linings, became a beacon, its stories of resilience reaching listeners across Georgia. I shared my own, not in detail, but in spirit, my voice steady as I spoke of rising from betrayal. The memoir I'd begun, Rising Tides, poured from me during a Charleston writing retreat, its pages a tapestry of pain and triumph. Writing it was like painting my watercolor each word a reclaiming of the Maggie who'd once deferred to Richard's control, believing finances were too complex for her. I wasn't that woman anymore. I was the architect of my dawn. Richard's world, meanwhile, had crumbled. His firm's investigation, fueled by Claire's evidence and other clients' complaints, led to his permanent suspension. He avoided criminal charges through cooperation, but his career was over. He moved to a small apartment across town, started therapy, and began rebuilding from scratch. I learned this from Daniel, who'd returned to Savannah to support Emily. Our children, once caught in the fallout, were healing. Emily forgave me for my secrecy, understanding it as protection. Daniel, initially angry, now saw my strength, joining me to paint Sophie's nursery. Their love was my anchor, a reminder that family endures beyond betrayal. Sophie's first birthday was a milestone, held in my loft with balloons and laughter. Emily and Daniel were there, their faces bright. Richard attended, quieter now, his presence tentative but welcome. As Sophie smeared cake on her cheeks, I felt a peace I hadn't known possible. The past year hadn't erased the pain, but it had transformed it into something beautiful, a life of purpose, connection, and joy. I thought of the girl sketching at the baby shower, her creativity a spark for my own. I thought of the letters I'd written to Emily and Daniel, now shared, their words a bridge to trust. One evening, as I dined with Lillian on my balcony, the Savannah skyline glowing, she raised her glass. "You're not the Maggie I've known for decades," she said, her eyes warm. I smiled, shaking my head. "I'm exactly the same," I said gently. I just let her shine. The truth settled in me like the river's current, steady and true. I hadn't changed my core. I'd uncovered it, peeling away the layers Richard's control had imposed. My greatest victory wasn't the assets I'd secured or the dignity I'd maintained. It was discovering I'd been capable of saving myself all along. As I looked out at Savannah, its lights dancing on the water, I felt the weight of my journey lift. Sophie's laughter, Emily's strength, Daniel's pride. The community I'd built, they were my dawn. A new day I'd crafted from the ashes of betrayal. Rising Tides was nearly complete. Its final chapter, a love letter to the woman I'd become. I was Maggie Sullivan, 61, a grandmother, an artist, a mentor, a voice. The river flowed below, its rhythm a song of renewal. I wasn't just surviving. I was soaring, and the horizon was mine to shape. His words had shattered the festive warmth of the Savannah Community Center, but I'd walked out with resolve, my secret fortress built with my financial advisor, Sandra Tate, and lawyer, Rebecca Larson, standing strong. I'd secured the Hilton Head Island beach house, redistributed our savings, and uncovered Richard's hidden Miami condos. Claire Monroe, revealed as his victim, not his lover, had given me evidence of his fraud, leading to a settlement that protected my future. Now, as I held my granddaughter, Sophie Rose, in my arms, I stood at the threshold of a new dawn, my heart full of a joy I'd fought to claim. The hospital room was quiet, Emily resting in her bed, her face soft with exhaustion and love. Sophie, born just hours ago, nestled against me, her tiny fingers curling around mine. Across the room, Richard sat, his presence a reminder of our fractured past. We'd signed the divorce papers months ago, granting me the Savannah and Hilton Head properties, 70% of our investments, and freedom from his liabilities. I'd allowed him visitation with Sophie, contingent on a financial ethics course, a small act of grace for the grandfather he might become. The silence between us was awkward, but Sophie's warmth dissolved its edges. For the first time, I saw not the man who'd betrayed me, but a piece of the family we'd built, however broken. The past year had been a journey of reinvention. After the settlement, I sold our colonial home, its rooms heavy with memories, and made my loft my permanent haven. Its sleek lines and river views mirrored the woman I was becoming, unburdened, vibrant, free. I traveled, fulfilling dreams Richard had dismissed as impractical. In New Orleans, I danced to jazz in the French Quarter, the music a celebration of my spirit. In Boston, I walked the Freedom Trail, each step a reminder of my own liberation. In Ireland, I wandered cliffs of Moher, the wind whispering of resilience. Each journey was a brushstroke on the canvas of my new life, a life I painted with intention. Back in Savannah, I poured myself into community. I volunteered at the library where I'd once taught, reading to children twice a week, their wide eyes reminding me of my teaching days. The lighthouse mural I'd painted with local youth now stood proud on the community center wall, its beam a symbol of guidance through storms. The scholarship fund I'd created for single mothers had grown, its recipients sending me letters of gratitude that I kept in a box beside my easel. Claire and I expanded our financial literacy workshop, teaching women to build their own fortresses. Sarah, my book club mentee, opened her bakery, and I was her first customer, savoring her cinnamon rolls with pride. The Savannah River flowed gently, its surface a canvas of gold under the June sunrise, as Maggie Sullivan stood on her loft's balcony, the scent of lavender from her garden mingling with the morning air. A year had passed since her world shifted, when Richard, her husband of 37 years, stood in the festive glow of their daughter Emily's baby shower, and announced he was leaving her for someone who truly sees my worth. The settlement ended their marriage, but it was Sophie's birth that crystallized Maggie's new reality. Holding her granddaughter, with Richard across the hospital room, Maggie felt not bitterness, but peace. Richard's career collapsed, his firm's investigation ending his license, forcing him to start anew in a small apartment. Maggie, meanwhile, soared. She sold their colonial home, making her loft her haven, and traveled New Orleans jazz, Boston's history, Ireland's cliffs. She volunteered at the library, reading to children, and expanded her scholarship fund for single mothers. Her memoir, Rising Tides, poured from her heart, its pages a love letter to resilience. Sophie's first birthday, celebrated in her loft with Emily, Daniel, and a humbled Richard, was a milestone of healing, a testament to love's endurance. Maggie's journey wasn't about changing who she was, but uncovering her core. "I'm exactly the same," she told Lillian. "I just let her shine." Her victory wasn't the assets she secured, but the discovery that she'd always been capable of saving herself. The Savannah skyline, glowing under that sunrise, was her horizon, a canvas for a life she'd painted with courage, creativity, and community. The lesson from Maggie's story is profound. Resilience is not the absence of pain, but the courage to build from it. Betrayal, whether personal or financial, can feel like an end, but it's a beginning if you choose to act. Maggie's transformation began with knowledge learning her finances, seeking allies, trusting her intuition. It grew through creativity, from painting to podcasting and community, from mentoring Sarah to empowering women with Claire. Her story teaches us that empowerment is a daily choice, a series of small, brave steps toward a life that reflects your worth. For today's audience, Maggie's lesson is a call to action. In a world of uncertain economic shifts, personal challenges, digital noise, take control where you can. Start with financial literacy. Open a savings account, track your spending, learn about investments. Knowledge is power, as Maggie learned when she uncovered Richard's secrets. Seek community, whether through book clubs, workshops, or friendships like Lillian's, to remind you you're not alone. Embrace creativity, be it journaling, painting, or a new hobby, to process pain and find joy. If betrayal or loss strikes, don't let it define you. Like Maggie, build your fortress, not with anger, but with purpose. Apply this daily. Set one goal each week. Read a financial article, join a local group, try a new skill. Write 3 things you're grateful for, as Maggie did, to ground yourself in hope. Mentor someone, as Maggie did with Sarah, to amplify your impact. Above all, trust your resilience. Maggie's dawn wasn't promised. She created it, step by step, proving that even in our darkest moments, we hold the power to rise. As Savannah's river flows, so does your potential steady, boundless, waiting for you to claim it. Those words, sharp and public, could have broken her. But Maggie, 61, a retired English teacher, had already begun rewriting her story. From the ashes of betrayal, she built a life of resilience, purpose, and joy, her journey a testament to the power of self-discovery. Maggie's story began with a spark of suspicion last Thanksgiving, when a text from Claire Monroe on Richard's phone, "Missing you. Last night was everything," cracked the facade of their marriage. For months, she'd noticed his late nights, his Atlanta business trips, the dinners for 2 on their credit card statements. Once a woman who deferred to Richard's control, believing finances were too complex for her, Maggie chose to act. With her friend Lillian's encouragement, she met Sandra Tate, a financial advisor, and Rebecca Larson, a lawyer, who helped her open personal accounts, transfer funds, and secure the Hilton Head Island beach house. She uncovered Richard's hidden Miami condos, his secret portfolios, a second mortgage she'd never signed. Each discovery was a brick in her fortress, each step a reclaiming of the agency she'd surrendered. While maintaining a facade of normalcy, cooking Richard's favorite shrimp and grits, planning Emily's coastal-themed baby shower, Maggie nurtured new passions. She joined a book club, finding solace in stories of resilience, and began painting watercolors, her Savannah riverfront scenes a mirror of her unfolding strength. She mentored Sarah, a young woman with dreams of a bakery, and co-hosted a podcast, Silver Linings, with Lillian, sharing tales of hope. These acts weren't just distractions. They were declarations of a Maggie who refused to be diminished. When Richard's announcement at the baby shower stunned their family and friends, Maggie responded with grace, walking out with her head high, sending him a link to her financial moves. The fallout was painful. Emily's tears, Daniel's anger, but Maggie's resolve held. Claire's visit revealed a deeper truth. She wasn't Richard's lover, but his victim, manipulated through financial fraud. Her evidence-forged statements, diverted funds, confirmed Richard's betrayal was not just personal, but professional. Maggie and Claire, once adversaries, became allies, launching a financial literacy workshop to empower other women. The confrontation with Richard was a turning point. In a Savannah parking lot, Maggie listed his secret debts, fraud, and ethics probe, her voice steady, her power undeniable. With Rebecca, she demanded a settlement. Both properties, 70% of investments, a lump sum alimony payment, and immunity from his liabilities. Richard, cornered by Claire's evidence, agreed, his only request visitation with his future grandchild Sophie Rose, contingent on an ethics course.